I'm currently in the process of working on 3 different sewing patterns: a trouser pattern, a crop top pattern, and a jacket pattern. And I'm going to take you along the journey of my entire week so you can see what it's like. Now let's get into it. I'm about to start tiling together a new sewing pattern design that I'm working on, and I am so excited to get into it. Now you'll probably know that I'm currently working on a trouser design pattern as well, and it is currently in its testing phase, which is so exciting. It is my very first PDF sewing pattern, which will hopefully be released to you guys soon. While it's in its testing phase, I wanted to start working on another pattern. This one isn't nearly as complex. It's actually a pattern that I created a while ago, but at that point in time, I didn't know how to digitize patterns, and I also didn't really know what I was doing in terms of pattern making. Basically, I used to own my own made-to-order clothing company where I made clothes from scratch for my customers, and it was awesome, but if I'm being totally honest, it was kind of a fake it till you make it situation. I essentially fell into the job because I started learning how to sew clothes at the very beginning of the pandemic, and I was just like, naturally posting about what I was doing on Instagram, and one of my friends was like, "Oh my gosh, you make clothes, that's so cool. Can you make a jacket for me? I'll pay you for it." And of course, we were at the very beginning of the pandemic. I had just lost my job, and I was like, yes, you can absolutely pay me to make you something. That was the beginning of it all. I think that people caught on really fast that I could make clothes and that I could do it well, and they wanted me to make them things, so I started selling it. It was honestly all fun and games until the point where I ended up getting so much commission work that I couldn't keep up with it in addition to having a full-time job. So eventually, after doing like a year or so of my made-to-order brand, I quit my normal full-time job and I just started to do sewing full-time. Now, while that was an awesome experience, I went from 0 to 100 really quick. I essentially was a brand new sewist who didn't really have any pattern making skills at all, making clothes for other people. So with that being said, I just made clothes that fit my body, and then my customer base was kind of just people who looked like me. And while I really wanted to be able to create an inclusive size range, I just simply didn't know how. At some point, I ended up purchasing the book Pattern Making for Fashion Design by Helen Joseph Armstrong, and I learned more about the basics of pattern making, but honestly, that stuff is pretty hard to teach yourself, and it's also kind of hard to even find good resources in the first place. So buying a textbook was my best bet, and I did learn some pattern making basics, but there was no information in there about how to grade patterns into a size range. So what I did was I would make patterns in my size, and then I would essentially scale it up a little bit and scale it down a little bit and cross my fingers and hoped it worked. And fortunately, for the most part, it did work, so that was cool. But there were times when I did have to turn away customers because I simply didn't have the skills to create clothing for their bodies. I did have good recommendations on other fashion designers that they could go to who created an inclusive size range, and honestly, I felt pretty bad every single time I had to do that, but I also didn't want to fake it and then not make a garment that fits them well. So anyways, that was kind of the whole journey of my made-to-order clothing company, which I eventually shut down probably like 6 or 7 months ago at this point. And since then, I've actually been learning how to pattern make properly and how to create an inclusive size range. I'm currently taking a course called Confident Pattern Making and Grading by Victoria from our Botcha Studio Patterns, and that's how I've gained all the skills to create this pattern. So this design is essentially one that I created for my previous business, but now that I actually know how to properly make patterns, I'm going back and I'm reworking the design so that I can grade it into a full size range and so that everything fits properly. It's actually kind of funny because now that I know how to actually fit patterns properly, I can look back at my previous design, and while I still think it's a beautiful design, I can look at it with a more technical eye and be like, oh, the shoulder doesn't quite sit in there properly and it doesn't fit here for XYZ reason. And anyways, it's very cool to be able to see that now, and I'm so excited that I can make this pattern the proper way and actually get it out to other home sewists so that they can sew it as well. I'll go ahead and pop some pictures in of the design so you can see what it's gonna look like. I'm over the moon about it. If you know anything about my design style, I'm very much into what I would consider elevated basics. So essentially, I like to take a basic garment and create it into something that's more interesting. So for me, this design is an elevated take on a classic long sleeve shirt. It features some really fun voluminous sleeves, and it also has a tie in the front and like a pretty deep plunging V neckline. It's super easy to wear as a casual piece with jeans, but it's also more elevated than just like jeans and a t-shirt. The best part about this sewing pattern is that it's easy and fast to sew. It's basically just a back piece, 2 front pieces, and 2 sleeve pieces all sewn together like a normal bodice, and then you hem the entire thing all the way around and add elastic to the sleeves. One other thing that's super fun is that if you don't like the puffy sleeve but you like a bell sleeve, you can actually just completely omit the elastic and you'll have this like really fun big sleeve. I also found that since I have a small bust, I could actually flip the shirt backwards and have the tie in the back and a high neckline. So that was a fun way to be more conservative in the front and a little more party in the back. When I originally created this design, I didn't add any darts to it because, like I said, I'm a pretty small busted person, so it wasn't necessary for me to put darts in it. But because I am going to grade this pattern into a full size range, I do want it to be able to fit bustier people, so I've added a dart to the pattern. One thing that I didn't really know too much about back in the day when I was first making this pattern is grain lines. So something that I hadn't really thought about was the front 2 pieces that are super long. You can't actually cut them on grain if the fabric is folded in half. So I'm gonna have to either figure out a workaround for that, or the pattern is just gonna be designed so that you cut with the fabric open rather than on the fold. But anyways, that's just something small that I need to work out that I've been thinking about, and I'm really excited to get into sewing this pattern. At this point, I've yet to decide whether or not I'm actually going to make this out of wearable toile fabric or if I'm going to be making this out of muslin fabric. I think it kind of depends on how this pattern looks against my original pattern, which I created years ago at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and finish tiling together this pattern, and then I'm going to match it against my old pattern, mostly to see what the neckline looks like, because if the back portion of the neckline doesn't look similar, then it might be hard to double fold under because of the curve. Anyways, I'm just thinking out loud. So I'm going to go ahead and finish tiling this, and then I will get back to you then. Okay, all of my pattern pieces are assembled, and based on the way that it's looking just when I hold it up against my body, I think that it's gonna work as a wearable toile, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a wearable toile, which is very exciting. My thought process is that if these pattern pieces are close enough to a wearable toile, then I can always tailor them along the way if I need to, and then take those adjustments and apply it to my pattern for the next wearable toile. One thing that I'm already noticing is that I think this sleeve is gonna be too long, but that's a super easy fix, so I'm not too worried about it. And honestly, way better to have it longer than to have it shorter, because obviously you can't add extra fabric once you've already cut it away unless you want like a seam line there. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the fabric so you can see what I'm working with. Okay, I've got this really nice rust colored fabric. It's just like a normal cotton material. It's pretty lightweight. I picked it up recently from a local fabric store, and it is already pre-washed. I do need to iron it though. I think it's been sitting around my sewing studio for a while. I thought that I was gonna get to making this toile a lot sooner. But yeah, anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and iron this out now so we can get it cut up and sewn. Oh my gosh, you guys, I literally just gave you a whole spiel about cutting on the grain, and I did not cut those pattern pieces on the grain, and it was totally unintentional. It's not a big deal because obviously I've made this pattern in the past and I didn't cut those on grain and it was totally okay, but that was not what I was supposed to do. Anyways, it's not a big deal, but I'm gonna go ahead and cut the rest of this and start sewing. so it is the next day. I finished my toile yesterday and I'm gonna put it on right now so you can see what we're working with. Okay, so overall, this is really good and I'm so happy with how it came together so far. With that being said, there are definitely a few adjustments that need to be made, so let's go over them. The first thing I noticed that I actually really like is that the addition of the bust darts helps keep the girls in a little bit better than my previous version. However, with that being said, the bust darts aren't placed exactly where I want them to be, but honestly, it's a really easy fix. I basically just have to move the bust darts down. So I don't know if you can see, but the bust dart is all the way up here and my nipple is like down here, so it needs to move down like maybe 3 inches or so. But yeah, I just want it to be more in line with like the apex portion. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure that out and I'll change that on Illustrator. I originally thought that the length of the arms was gonna be too long, but I actually really like the length. I ended up choosing to not do elastic through this just because I like the way that the bell sleeve looks and I didn't want to have to go through the trouble of doing a whole elastic thing when this is just a toile. I also really like the length of these ties, so I don't need to change anything there. And then one thing that I'm thinking about is the length around this way. Normally I would like something that goes like a little bit lower at my natural waist, but the thing with that is that if I bring this down lower, then the curve also scoops down lower and then the knot isn't gonna sit right at like the sternum area, which is something that I really like about this toile. So I'm gonna have to troubleshoot that and I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to bring it down. Honestly, the way that it is isn't too bad. It is definitely like shorter than I'm used to, but at the back it's still a little bit longer and I do think that it's flattering. So yeah, not totally sure what I'm going to do about that yet, but I'll think on it. The last thing that definitely needs to be fixed is this arm side area, and while it does actually fit really well, it is far too close to my body than I would prefer for this fit. Because it's so snug around the arms, it's causing like some uncomfortable restriction, and while it technically fits, I do want there to be extra ease around the arm side. Other than that, I am so happy with how this turned out. It feels very fun and easygoing, other than, you know, the arm side being a little bit too tight. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and make those adjustments in Illustrator. So I was planning to make pattern updates in Illustrator, but then I realized I'm gonna be out of town and away from my sewing studio this week for like 3 days. So I decided that instead of doing computer work here, I was gonna do everything sewing related here so that when I go away, I'm gonna have computer work that I can do while I'm gone. That way I won't have to completely stop working for the 3 days that I'm gonna be out of town. So instead, I wrote down notes on what needs to be changed in Illustrator, and then I'm also gonna bring that garment with me so that I have it to reference if I need it. And today I think I'm gonna work on my chore coat pattern some more. I'll link the video where I go through the entire process of creating the design, but after it's sitting in my sewing studio on my mannequin for a while, I'm not so sure that I'm actually happy with the way it's designed currently. So I'm gonna put it on and show you how I'm feeling about it and what changes I want to make, and then we're going to make another wearable toile. This is the coat that we're working with right now. It is a wearable toile and it's made out of a denim material that isn't what's going to be intended for the material of this coat pattern. So I think that's partially where I went wrong, but I'm also not in love with the proportions here. Right now there are a handful of panels, so there's actually 2 front panels here and then there's 3 panels in the back. There's 1 big section for the bottom and 2 sections for the sides, so it's like split down the middle. The sleeves also have a seam down this way rather than on the bottom, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make each sleeve piece 2 pieces so that there's a seam at the top and at the bottom. That way the top stitching situation is just a little bit easier. So I'm going to go ahead and try that, and then I also want to change the length of this because right now it feels like really big and like it's kind of taking up everything, and I'm not super about it. So I'm going to pin it up and see what we think. Here's what it looks like when it's pinned up and it's more of a cropped jacket, and I don't know what it is, but this instantly feels so much better. I think what would also be fun is if I actually extended the sleeves by pretty much double what the cuff width is right now so that I can fully flip it up, because I think that'll add a really nice detail to the coat. And then I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do about the pocket situation yet, but it'll probably be some sort of patch pocket that goes on top or on the inside. So I'm just going to worry about the pocket design after the coat is created. Rather than going into Illustrator and fixing the pattern and then reprinting it out and cutting it and all of that, I'm just going to take my original pattern and tailor it onto the fabric, because I know the changes that need to be made and they're pretty minor, so it doesn't constitute actually printing out the entire pattern again. I'm going to go ahead and take this off and grab the fabric that I'm going to use. Okay, so I've got this really beautiful mid-weight twill that I'm gonna be using. This is actually the same material that I used for the last toile of my trouser pattern, and I absolutely love it. It's a super soft material, and for the type of fabric that it is, it feels like it has a really heavy and luxurious drape. I wish you could like feel it through the screen because it's absolutely amazing. I originally purchased it from Joann's and it was 70% off, so I bought the rest of what they had, which I think was about 5 yards. It was an absolute steal, and I'm so glad that I picked it up. Now, in terms of the hardware that I want to use, I could opt for regular buttons, but I'm really interested in using these snap buttons instead. I think they have a really nice color. Again, I picked these up from Joann's. It was the easiest and closest option to me. I also recently made a crosstown crescent bag out of this same material, and the front has a snap button in this same bronze color, and it's gonna look so fun as one big monochrome outfit. I am absolutely over the moon about it. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this fabric up and get to cutting. I wonder if we're gonna have enough fabric. We might not. We've actually got more than enough fabric. We're good. Okay, it is the next day. I finished my chore coat yesterday, and overall it is awesome and I'm super happy with it. There are definitely a few things that I'd like to alter to the pattern in order to make it perfect, but we're pretty close to being there. So let me go ahead and put it on and show you. She's so cute. Yay. Okay, so here is what we're working with. First thing is that these buttons are absolutely amazing. They're like super nice and hardy and thick, and I feel like they hold really well. They also snap really nicely. Like, listen. So nice. I love the way that they look, and I feel like they add so much to the garment. Let me actually grab them so you can reference them if you decide you want to purchase some. Okay, these are the heavy duty snap fasteners by Dritz, and I purchased them from Joann's. They're a size 24, which is 5/8 of an inch, and it is a 6 count. However, with that being said, I don't know if you know the company Wawak. It's W-A-W-A-K. You can find them online. They're based out of Reno, Nevada, and they have amazing prices. The price on these specific snap fasteners is significantly less money if you purchase them through Wawak instead of Joann's. The only thing with Wawak is that they're gonna send you probably more than you need. I think the set comes with like 50 or 100, but it costs less money for me to buy that pack than it did for me to purchase 2 of these packs, which only come with 6 of them from Joann's. Overall, a way better bang for your buck. They also ship super, super fast, and they're a great place to buy notions in general, so just keep them top of mind if you're thinking about purchasing notions. I'll have them linked down below so that you can check it out. Now let's go ahead and continue talking about this jacket. One thing that I like, but I do need to fix, is the cuff situation here. This is how long the garment actually is, but I cuffed it up, which was intended, and I do really like the way that it looks. The only thing is that because I wasn't patterning it out on Illustrator, I wasn't really thinking about all the logistics of how you would turn up a cuff. And essentially what happened is that the cuff is a bit narrower, and so when you flip it up, it causes a little bit of bunching. It's not super noticeable, but like you can see here, there's a fold. I don't really want there to be a fold, so I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that I alter that in the pattern so that the cuff here, when it's flipped up, is going to be the exact same width all the way around so that there's no weird bunching happening. Another thing that I want to change is the collar. The collar's fine, but I don't think it's exactly what I'm looking for. It doesn't have enough of like an oomph, and I do want it to be some sort of point of interest because this is obviously a pretty simple garment, and I want there to be something about it that really stands out. There are some details that I was really intentional about that I think makes it stand out to some degree, but it's really, really subtle unless you use a different color top stitching thread than the actual color of your garment. I didn't do that, so it's probably something that's a little bit difficult to see. But for example, there's stitching that goes all the way down the arm. I think it looks super nice because I've never seen a garment that has a seam down the center of the arm rather than just underneath. My original design didn't have this underarm seam, but because of the way the garment is constructed, it was really, really hard to get top stitching all the way down this seam because it's one long skinny tube. And so instead I made the design so that I could construct the sleeve as one piece, then do the top stitching, and then attach it onto the bodice. But because I did it that way, there was a necessity for me to have the seam under the arm as well. I don't really have any qualms with that, but that's something that I noticed from my first toile that I changed to this toile. Another one of those nice subtle details is that at the very back it's split down the middle, so there's also top stitching that goes down the middle here. And then one other subtle thing is that the turn up at the very bottom as well as the placket are actually the exact same width, and I think that that's visually a very clean look. But yeah, here's what it looks like all the way around. I'm very, very happy with it. I think it fits super nicely. It's very comfortable, especially given that I used this fabric and not denim like I did last time. I originally didn't think that I was going to wear it completely buttoned up, but I actually really like the way that this looks. But it also looks really nice when it's completely undone and I just have a shirt underneath. This is a super casual and easy thing to pretty much throw over any outfit because it's so neutral. Now, I told you before that I use this same material to make tapioca trousers and a crosstown crescent bag, so I'm gonna go ahead and put them all on together and see what they look like. Oh my god, you guys, I do not think you are ready for this outfit. This whole outfit is such a vibe. I can't even tell you how cool I think it is. I don't think I've ever worn a fully monochrome outfit, especially one that I made all by myself, which is absolutely amazing. I self-drafted my pants and my top, and that in and of itself feels so damn good. I'm in love with the hardware that I chose. I love that the hardware on the bag matches the hardware on the jacket. Overall, everything just feels so crisp and clean. I think the only thing that would help elevate this outfit is some extra jewelry. I have a gold chain that would look really nice attached to the belt loops of these trousers. And then one other thing that I think would be really nice is if I took a gold necklace and I actually stuck it underneath the collar of the jacket. My Birkenstock Bostons are also a little bit worse for wear. I did purchase them secondhand and they were definitely used before I started wearing them, and they've had a great long life with me. So one of these days I'll be updating them, and then the whole outfit will be such a vibe. While twirling around and wearing these clothes, I also noticed that the back neckline of the jacket could be brought down a little bit, so I'm gonna make note of that and be sure to change it on my pattern. I also chose to not add any pockets to the jacket because I think it looks really nice and clean just the way that it is. I hope you enjoyed this little peep into the life of a sewing pattern designer. If you have any desire to make sewing patterns, be sure to check out the course that I'm currently enrolled in, and I'll have all of that information linked down below. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one.